What happens to the body after death? How long does it take for a dead body to decompose? Is there anything more terrifying than a dead body? How do animals eat human flesh? These are some of the questions we find ourselves asking when we come across an abandoned hospital like this one. The building we're looking at was once a hive of activity. It was a place where people went when they were ill or injured, hoping that the medical professionals inside could save their lives. But over time, the hospital fell into disrepair and was eventually abandoned. For those in need of medical attention, the doctors and nurses who worked here were highly trained professionals who dedicated their lives to saving others. The rooms were kept cool, and the bodies were carefully stored so that they would remain as intact as possible. The hospital was equipped with state-of-the-art technology and facilities. First, the body will start to bloat as gases are produced by the bacteria that are breaking down the soft tissues. After a few days, the body will start to turn green as the blood decomposes and the skin becomes discolored. Eventually, the body will start to leak fluids and break down completely. And it's at this point that things start to get really creepy. This means that the animals could have dug up the bodies and eaten them. Even after the patients had been laid to rest, no one knows how many bodies were left behind in the hospital when it was abandoned. They had families and friends who loved them, and their deaths were a tragedy. It was hard to imagine the pain and suffering that some of the patients went through in their final moments. It's a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their social status or cause of death. And it's even harder to imagine what their families must have felt like when they never got their bodies back. But it's likely that there were dozens, if not hundreds. Sometimes, despite the skill and expertise of the medical professionals, patients would succumb to their illnesses or injuries. By learning more about what happened here, we've given a voice to those who died and been left behind. There may be structural damage or other hazards that you're not aware of and putting yourself at risk. Additionally, you should never disturb any human remains that you may come across. Not only is it safer, but it's also more fun to explore these places with someone else. You can share the experience and the knowledge with each other, and it makes the whole thing less creepy. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. It's important to treat the dead with respect, and disturbing their bodies is not only disrespectful, but it could also be illegal. If you ever come across an abandoned hospital or any other structure that may contain human remains, it's important to proceed with caution. We've even also gained a deeper understanding of the decomposition process and the animals that are attracted to dead bodies. However, given the state of decomposition, it's likely that they had been there for several weeks or even months. By learning more about what happened to them and how their bodies decomposed, we can pay them the respect they deserve. Let us also remember the families who never got the chance to say goodbye and the medical staff who did their best to save lives, but ultimately couldn't. At these times, the hospital's facilities were used not to save lives, but to preserve them. What we're left with is a haunting reminder of what once was, a place where life and death were on a knife edge every day. It's a truly horrifying thought, but it's likely that this is exactly what happened at the abandoned hospital. The hospital was located near a busy road, and it's believed that animals such as dogs and foxes would often scavenge the grounds. These animals would have been attracted to the smell of death and decay, and would have started to eat the bodies as soon as they were left behind. In this video, we'll be exploring the abandoned hospital in all its glory. We'll be talking about how hospitals are designed to keep patients alive, as well as what happens to the bodies of those who don't make it. So without further ado, let's dive into the decaying halls of this abandoned hospital and find out what happened here. Long before it became an abandoned shell of its former self, the hospital served as a beacon of hope for many. As we explore the different wards and departments of the hospital, we're transported back in time to when it was bustling with activity. In the emergency room, we can almost hear the sirens wailing as ambulances brought in patients who needed urgent care. In the operating theaters, we can see the gleaming instruments and the rows of beds where patients were monitored closely by medical staff. And in the wards themselves, we can imagine the quiet murmur of voices as doctors made their rounds and patients chatted with each other. But despite the best efforts of everyone involved, not everyone who entered the hospital survived. In the morgue, the bodies of those who had passed away were kept until they could be released to their families for burial or cremation. However, as the hospital fell into disrepair and was eventually abandoned, the bodies of those who had died there were left behind. When a body is left to decompose, it goes through a number of stages. In the case of the abandoned hospital, we don't know exactly how long the bodies were left there for. If that's not bad enough, there's another gruesome detail to consider. Imagine, if you will, the sight of a fox or dog tearing into a dead body and eating the flesh. To make matters even worse, it's believed that some of the bodies were buried in shallow graves on the hospital grounds. It's also possible that some of the bodies were never properly identified, and that the families of those who died never knew what happened to their loved ones. While it may seem like a morbid topic to discuss, it's important to remember that these were real people who died at the hospital. As we continue to explore the abandoned hospital, we can't help but feel a sense of sadness for those who died here. The hospital isn't just a scary place filled with dead bodies. Although it may be tempting to dismiss the dead as nothing more than a source of fear or revulsion, they were once living, breathing people who had hopes and dreams for the future. So let's take a moment to remember the people who died at the abandoned hospital. As we finish our tour of the abandoned hospital, we can't help but feel a sense of closure. It's not an easy subject to tackle, but it's important to learn about these things so that we can be better prepared in the future. First and foremost, you should never enter a building if you don't know whether it's safe to do so. If you do come across any human remains, you should immediately contact the authorities so that they can deal with the situation appropriately. And finally, you should always bring a friend with you when exploring abandoned places. Exploring abandoned places can be a fascinating and eerie experience, but it's important to do so safely and respectfully. We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you did, please leave us a like and subscribe for more videos like this.